What's going on, YouTube? My name is FG3000, back in the place to be with more Blade and Soul. In today's video, it's all about PvP. So, if you're looking for an overview of all the different modes of PvP in Blade and Soul, look no further. I'll be sharing a few details of each mode and my general thoughts and impressions of such. Without any further ado, let's jump right into Blade and Soul PvP. So there are three different modes of PvP in Blade and Soul. There's World PvP, there's 1 vs 1 Arena, and 3 vs 3 Arena. Now, just to come right out and say it, if you're coming from a different MMO with Battlegrounds, there are no Battlegrounds in Blade and Soul. So there's no Capture the Flag, there's no Capture and Hold. None of those different modes are in Blade and Soul. Only Arena and only World PvP is in Blade and Soul. Now, let's start off with the easy one to cover, World PvP. Now in Blade and Soul, there's no such thing as a PvP server. All of the servers are exactly the same. Now the way you initiate PvP, and I'm going to keep this super simple, there's a lot more details that I'm not going to cover, but for the most part, there's a red faction and there's a blue faction. Very early in the game, probably about the first 45 minutes, you have to decide on a faction. Now that faction choice is actually pretty important. You can only chat to people that are in your faction, and you can only join clans of people that are also in your faction. So if you go red, you will only be able to join red factions and vice versa for blue. So keep that in mind if you're going to join this game with your friends. That is a very important choice. However, if you're just joining this game as a solo player and you don't really care, the only difference between the two clans really is red versus blue and how they look in their different outfits. Yes, they do have different costumes, so you might want to check that out before you decide on which faction that you join. Alright, now that we have all that out of the way, let's actually talk about the World PvP. Now, like I said earlier, there's no such thing as a PvP server. Now, if you join the red faction, they gave you a red outfit, and if you join the blue faction, they gave you a blue outfit. You have to wear that outfit in order to be killable by the other faction. So let's say that you're in your normal outfit and a person from the blue faction comes up to you, he cannot kill you unless you're wearing your red outfit, and vice versa. So, yeah, there is World PvP, but it's completely consensual. It only happens when you want it to. But before you think you're just gonna go running around backstabbing people, there is a casting time on taking your outfit off. There's not one to put it on, but there is one to take it off. So you can't just go and backstab someone and hurry up and change clothes and act like nothing happened. That's not gonna work, you scumbag blues. Now, other than just randomly ganking people and ruining their day, what do you actually get from World PvP, FG? I'm glad you asked. Now, if you take a look at the video, there are little blue circles next to each player's name. That dictates their rank. The more blues you kill, the higher rank you get, the more points you get, the more gear you can buy. Pretty simple. Do keep in mind, however, if you die, you do lose points. So you definitely want to be careful if you're out there PvPing in your faction's costume. So that is the general overview of World PvP. Now it's time for my personal thoughts on the matter. Blade and Soul World PvP, in my opinion, based off of what I've seen, is pretty much non-existent. In the beginning, people were kind of walking around in their costumes and trying to World PvP, but for the most part, World PvP only happens very rarely. Now, once you hit max level, there are some dailies that force you to go to the enemy faction's bases and kill their NPCs. And that usually makes some of the blue players come out and defend their NPCs. But for the most part, most people just switch to another channel that has a lot less opposition just to knock their dailies out and go off and do something else. So my final thought on World PvP and Blade and Soul, if that's your favorite type of PvP, Blade and Soul is not going to scratch that itch for you, unfortunately. Your mileage may vary, but based off of what I've seen in my personal gameplay and what I've read in chat, that is pretty much everyone's experience for World PvP in Blade and Soul so far. Oh, but don't you worry, the video gets a lot more positive from here on out. The next mode is Arena 1 vs 1, and I absolutely adore this mode. First detail out of the way, this mode is normalized, so gear and weapons, none of that matters. It's all about skill. And another detail that I thought was pretty neat, this mode is anti-BM. Not only can you not chat with the player that you're going against, you don't even know their name. As far as you know, they're a computer-controlled NPC, so it makes it a lot easier for people that aren't really into 1 versus 1 arena, just due to the pressures of playing a mode like this. It makes it a lot easier. There are also tons of dailies that just give you bonuses just for showing up. So win, lose, or draw, you can still earn currency in arena just by at least giving it a try. Now, I know some people might kind of, scoff at that idea of losing and still being able to gain currency, but this is a fantastic idea to kind of push people to this mode and maybe convert a few of them to full-time PvPers. Now, speaking of PvP currency, which are called Zen Beans in this game, there's actually a pretty thoughtful idea that goes behind this currency. Now, if you PvP, you will earn Zen Beans whether you win or lose. Obviously, you get more Zen Beans if you win. Now, you can take those Zen Beans to a vendor and buy a material called Soul Stone. Now, keep up with me. Soul Stones are very sought after by PvE players. Now, you'll take those Zen Beans, buy a ton of Soul Stones, put them on the auction house, and make a ton of gold. You can use that gold to keep your gear kind of up to date. So if you do decide to go do some PvE dailies, you're not going to gimp yourself if all you do is PvP. And of course, if you're a min-maxer, you can do all your PvP dailies, all your PvE dailies, and just max it out everywhere, which is what I do. Alright, now that we have all of the arena details out of the way, let's actually talk about the arena PvP, FG. Now, I've said before, Blade & Soul has the best MMO combat that I have ever played out of any MMO ever. So there's no surprise that the PvP in this game is an absolute adrenaline rush. It's all about counters and parries and getting behind your enemy and delaying, waiting for your cooldowns to come up and trying to juggle people and stun lock them, and it's just insane. It's so hard to explain in the video. You just have to feel it. Now, as far as balance is concerned, that is a point of contention right now. Most of the classes are actually very well balanced except for the two extremes. Summoner is by far one of the most powerful classes in this game. It's not even debatable. Now, I think I'm pretty decent at PvP. There was a time that I did PvP, was a 3 versus 3 match. One summoner beat all 3 of us. Now, you might just say learn to play, but that is the consensus across the community right now. Summoners are just wiping the floor with people, and when you look at the charts and you see all the people that are in the top brackets, all of them are summoners. So summoners are running this game when it comes to PvP. Hopefully there are some balanced patches coming that kind of normalizes that. I've heard once the game moves up to level 50, the balance is a lot better. But for right now, Summoner is by far the best class of PvP, and my class, Blade Master, is by far the worst. When it comes to the top brackets, Blade Masters have the lowest representation in those brackets. So I'm only talking about high-end PvP. I'm not talking about my personal experiences. When you look at the brackets, the top end brackets are filled with summoners and the bottom end brackets are filled with Blade Masters. So that's just the gist of it, unfortunately. Now, all of the classes in between, however, do seem extremely balanced. So Destroyers, Assassins, and Force Masters, they're actually in a pretty good place. Like I said, the only problem in PvP when it comes to balance currently, from my eyes, are the two extremes, which are Summoner and Blade Master. So don't let that stop you from getting into PvP. Right now, we're in the preseason, so none of the numbers really matter. We're not in season 1 just yet, so I suggest jump into PvP, pick any class you want, including Blade Master, including Summoner, and just get in there in PvP. Yeah, the balance is going to change, but that's going to be the case throughout the game's life. People get nerfed, people get buffed. That's the way the game goes, but for right now, the PvP is worth it. Jump in and enjoy it. That's 1 versus 1. Let's talk about 3v3. Now, Blade & Soul 3 vs 3 Arena uses a tag system. Now, this is quite different than any other 3 vs 3 mode in any MMO that I've ever played. This is more reminiscent to games like Tekken Tag Tournament or Marvel vs Capcom, where you pick 3 people and you tag in and out of the match while the match is live. Yeah, it's crazy. So what happens is you queue up with 3 people, random 3 people versus random 3 people. You then decide who starts off the fight. I always like to start off the fight. I like to set the tempo. One person from each team, they come out and they start fighting. From that point, it's basically a 1 versus 1 match with your 2 friends on the sideline. Now, they have a cooldown called Interfere. They can press that button and they jump in the match with you, and they have a few seconds to literally do anything they want. And the really good players will use this interfere skill to not only do extra damage, but also to bail you out, allow you to get some cooldowns, and take some pressure off you depending on how the battle is going. Now, if the battle starts going really bad, you can tag out to the next person. Now, once you tag out, you go to the sidelines, but you do not regain health. So you need to be very strategic on how long you stay there. If you're starting to get beat down, you might want to just tag out and hope for a better matchup later down the line and let your team carry you a little bit. Or if you're doing really good and you're dominating, just stay out there until it looks bad. It's really a ton of fun. I highly recommend 3 versus 3 arena tag in this game. And just like in 1 versus 1 arena, you do earn Zen Bean as a currency, and there are also dailies to help push you towards 3 versus 3 arena. You will not regret it. And that is Blade and Soul PvP. To kind of sum up my final thoughts in the game, like I said, World PvP kind of meh. It's cool when it happens, but for the most part, don't expect it too often. Most people that are red towards each other will just walk right past on their way to the next quest, and that's kind of how it is. 1 versus 1 arena, like I said, it's incredible. Every time I play it, I'm kind of shaking because I'm like trying so hard. I'm trying to make sure that I counter everything I can counter, exploit every weakness and every opening. It is such a rush. Hopefully the balance gets better. Like I said, I've been looking at some of the Korean patches, and it does seem that the balance gets better and better as we get closer to level 50. Do keep in mind Warlock is coming out, so that's going to change everything as well. That comes out March 2nd, so if you're not playing Blade and Soul and you want to play Blade and Soul, Warlock comes out March 2nd, and there will be a ton of people leveling up, and the newbie zones should be flooded. So take that opportunity, come to the game, roll a Warlock, or roll whatever class you want to, because that will be the time to give Blade and Soul a try if you missed the initial rush. Once again, my name is FG3000. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for all things MMO and MOBA. I'll see you next video. Later.